Good afternoon, everybody. This is Steve Cassio with ShopView. I'm the Chief Customer Officer here. Thanks so much for joining us today. It is my pleasure and honor to kick off today's session in partnership with Bob Hansen, President and CEO of Hutchinson Body Sealing Division. A couple of house items just to keep the audience in tune as to questions and answers, etc. We are going to record this session today. All participants are on mute. We do expect the content that we're delivering to take approximately 40 minutes. To leave times for question and answer at the end. If you have questions throughout the session, we'd encourage you to type those questions in the chat box. We are monitoring the chat box and we'll respond to those questions toward the end of the webinar. And again, this recording is being, this webinar is being recorded, so we'll be able to get a copy of it out to all of you. At the end of the show, at the end of the webinar, you'll also see my email address and phone number. You may route any questions you weren't able to ask today to my direct attention, and I'll be sure to disseminate them to the team. So again, thank you for joining us today for this great webinar we put together. I'm glad to have Bob here as well. A couple of things that I'll throw out there. Over 20 years I've spent in the manufacturing and software industry, two things have been constant, and it's been pretty consistent throughout my stops along the way. Technology advancements come fast and furious, and companies' abilities to adapt to change and adopt them are always challenged. Because of the demands and the pressures put on the manufacturing process and the output process. So one of the things we'll talk about today is how do we help you in your journey around IoT? When we spent some time at the IoT show last week in Fort Lauderdale, we found some consistent things. One, companies were still scratching their head, how am I going to incorporate this IoT strategy into my business? Two, who can help me? Who's a partner that can help me advance my strategy? L&S Research is a very well-regarded analyst firm in the manufacturing space, put out a study recently around Industry 4.0. Only 20% of industrial companies classify themselves as leaders in their space. That, to me, tells me there's a lot of opportunity for everybody. Opportunity to advance your efforts and to build a vision that will help you jumpstart your IoT strategy. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Bob Hansen, again, the President and CEO of Hutchinson Body Sealing Division. Bob's been at the helm for 28 years. This helped grow his global business to over $300 million in annual sales with double-digit growth year after year. And technology plays a critical role in how he's been able to achieve some of the successes that he's had, and as well as the people that he's brought on board to help with his organization. So Bob, I think it's accurate. I'll pass it over to you. Is it true, I believe, that your products are found in 1 in every 5 vehicles in North America?
Well, I'd say that we have a really strong penetration rate across most of all of the OEMs in North America. And just to be clear on the global sales, actually the sales, I represent the North American business unit of the body sealing system activity. And so the $300 million represents my current sales level in North America. I have to say that we're really grateful to be successful with most all of the OEMs here in North America, with recent nice penetrations at the Japanese OEMs. Traditionally, the Japanese OEMs have mostly worked with Japanese suppliers. In some cases, we're the largest non-Japanese supplier to some of the partners that we've acquired. So no, we're doing a great job, and we're doing it through technology for sure.
That's excellent. So I think that's a great segue, Bob. Again, on behalf of everybody that's attending out there on the webinar, thank you for joining us today and spending some time with us. I'd like to shift the dialogue a little bit to talking about Hutchinson's manufacturing execution system and how it is a foundational element to your IoT strategy. You and I have had some good conversation about this, but I think for the audience to hear a little bit about some of the rules that you have in place, some of the guidelines you have in place to help facilitate success would be a good place to start.
What's interesting is yesterday was actually my anniversary date with the company. I've been with the company for 28 years. And I've held different roles in the company, and over the last 10 years, the last decade, I've been at the helm of the organization. And as the head coach, one of the things I brought to the organization was really a disciplined process. And to follow that disciplined process, I have basic 3 rules. And in fact, if you were to interview any of my employees, what are the 3 basic rules of our activity? They're going to quote it: be on time, be prepared, and talk with data. One of the things I like about data, I'm a math guy. I tutored math in college. I have an engineering background, and I love math because math has no emotion. And one of the things I really appreciate is all of our decisions are based on analytics that are math derivatives. So we don't have a lot of emotion. We process data. We can, from good data, make great decisions. And that's really why we follow those three basic rules. Be on time, be prepared, and talk with data.
And the data piece, I mean, data is the linchpin to a successful IoT strategy.
It is truly, it's really critical, because as long as you have good data, again, you can make good decisions.
So, you brought up a good point about people and machines. So I think all of our customers, those that are out here in the webinar today, would have the same objective, is to optimize their people, optimize their machines, and ultimately optimize the production process. Tell me a little bit more about the machine and the people part in your organization.
When I took over the organization, I had a vice president of operations initially. After 3 years, I decided to eliminate that position because I wanted to be closer to the manufacturing environment. When I took over the manufacturing environment in 2013, one of the techniques I use when I'm trying to learn something about an organization is I'll go into the organization and I ask not to be with anybody. I don't want to be escorted around any location. I want to have an opportunity to see the environment that I'm going to go into. And typically what I'll do is I'll go into an environment. In this case, I would go into my plants and I would stand for a couple of hours and make observations. Some of the observations I made when doing this at one of my plants, in fact, my plant here in New Hampshire, is I was watching people leave the workstation, and I recorded, the occurrence. Couldn't understand it, and I saw some occurrences where people were putting parts in a reject hold area and sometimes just scrapping the parts without making any identification on paperwork. After a while, I went and I'd interview the people. And in this case, I interviewed the two people that had left their workstation, and I asked them, why did you leave? One person had left because he had run out of component parts and they went to pick up some component parts themselves. And another one had left because of a maintenance issue, went to maintenance to find the person. When I asked the person who was not recording the data, they said, oh, we catch up the data during the break. What I couldn't understand is the most important people to an organization are the people that are making parts. These are the only people making money. In fact, in North America, I have quite a bit of labor in in Mexico. In the United States, I use mostly automation. So the robots are the ones that are truly making money. And so the important thing to recognize is we have to serve either the robots or the people, and they need to know that we're here to support them. And we weren't. And the analytics wasn't good analytics because the information didn't provide us clarity on that. And so what we initially had done is we tackled this concept of MES initially by going to an internal development process. And I asked my organization to help me with the analytics to be able to have a better control over what was going on the floor. But I found after a year of development that wasn't the right thing to do, that I had to go to the outside. And that's really, Steve, where we came to find from our research, we felt the best partner would be you guys.
Sure. It's interesting. So that was a great segue into the first step of a 4-step process of understanding the approach to value, is seeing what's happening. So I have to ask you a little bit of humor here. When you're doing that assessment and observation, are you undercover boss? Do they know who you are?
Yeah. See, well, I'm bald, and so I could probably put on a wig and they wouldn't. But no, listen, I have a very close connection with all my employees. I would never be able to pull up undercover boss because of I greet every one of my employees when I go into a plant. I go in all shifts, and so they all know me. So it wouldn't work that well.
It's not going to work.
It wouldn't work that well.
But I think it's great that you're able to firsthand see and observe what's happening. The next step really in the process is to understand why it's happening, right? So gathering that information, being able to start to formulate well-informed decisions and programs and processes. Talk to me a little bit about once you've been able to observe, and then how do you implement some change, or how do you start to facilitate getting ready to implement change?
Well, again, after the failed attempt in 2013 to try to develop our own MES system, in 2014, I sat down with my leadership team and we have a process which is a management alignment process. where we go off a couple times a year and we talk strategy and other activities. And at the time, what I did is I introduced a concept. At that time, the code word we used was factory of the future, Hutchison factory of the future. And what I did is I painted a picture of what my vision of the company was going to be in 5 years. In fact, the analogy I gave to the people, and I still do, is I feel like I'm an architect, that I've designed a home, by the way, a really nice home, and I'm in the process of building the home. Now, unfortunately, the home takes time to build. And as I build out a room, one of the things I've learned along the way is that I've had some opportunities to improve my design. But the fact is the design is intact and the execution is intact and people are aligned with that. And in fact, as they see the house being built, the excitement has grown.
Sure.
Because now people are seeing, I can use this room and gosh, it's very functional. So they're excited to hear about the next phase of the house development. And so the excitement is growing as we come together and as I roll on to the continuation of this strategy. The excitement continues, and I have to say that I'm really happy with the design of the house, by the way.
So Paul, what we're going to do is we're going to quickly touch upon stages 3 and 4, and I think we should double click a little bit on stages 1 and 2. A lot of our customers are still in those areas. I know that you, over the last 3 to 5 years, have made incredible strides moving into that stage 3, stage 4, because of the foundational technologies you put in place, the people you put in place. So we look at stage 3, which is, I think, is a great opportunity for people to understand. We now know what's happening. We've got good data to make decisions. We can start to prepare and move into a predictive model, which can get them to that next step where they're running machine-to-machine communications, etc. I know you guys have done that. You've got an incredibly talented team in place to implement those things. We get into step 4 of the phase. It's really about autonomous actions, really putting machines to work for you. And I've been through your factories, and you're doing that already, which is an incredible thing. So, I know that you monitor success. I know you monitor key criteria throughout the manufacturing process at all of your plants. So let's do this. Let's step into phase 1. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening, right, and what you're seeing. So some of the foundational things that you see, you're finding simple and accurate data. You're finding real-time information. Right, your accurate overall equipment effectiveness and site conformity. It is all about the data ultimately. And tell us a little bit about how you've taken the vast volumes of data that you've been able to collect and put it to work for you.
Well, while we drive the operation through obviously a KPI metric, what we're trying to do is we're trying to prepare the future of the company. And in preparing the future of the company, we take a look at all of the attributes of the organization to do that. Data is really key to that in terms of the utilization of equipment, how we're managing the floor, how we're managing people. Because remember, the most important aspect of any organization is your people, and we want to make certain we create an environment that they want to be part of. In fact, one of the benefits I have is because of the type of style of management we have no turnover. We have virtually no turnover in our organization, and it's a compliment to the management team and how we manage a coaching style of management. But because of it, we try to look at things very simplistically. When you take a look at the manufacturing environment, for me, I don't want to oversimplify it, but it's simple. You have a mass of material coming in the facility. You have a mass of material you sell to your customer, and the difference is scrap. And a lot of times people can't see that. They don't see it because they're so far in the weeds that they can't see the things that are starting to create a problem for them. And what we've decided is we wanted to take a helicopter view to be able to see where the problem areas are, and we wanted to be able to go in and resolve the issues before they became major issues. And the helicopter view provides us that insight on a continuing basis to be able to constantly monitor the production work environment to understand, is our attainment okay? Is our downtime okay? Is our people okay? All of those KPIs, are they, and it's real time. And what was happening with the phase one, when I took over, we would do shop floor paperwork, and we would submit the shop floor paperwork to finance, and finance would then populate it. And then 24 hours later, you'd have some insight. Well, I'm sorry, in 24 hours, that little grass fire has now become a forest fire.
Sure.
And I couldn't live that way. I could not live that way. I had to have real-time analytics to be able to provide me an insight when I did the helicopter view. I have a grass fire that's growing. Go fix it. And that's what we've been able to do with the implementation of our MES strategy, is to be able to have those analytics and provide us that information real time.
I think what's key too is, I mean, I believe you have 7 sites in North America with all slightly different processes, right? So you're able to put some standardization in place to really help drive those efficiencies further too.
Yeah, if you take a look at the sites, each site has a strategic product family that they service. However, when you take a look at the business systems, you walk in any one of the locations, you're going to see exactly the same business processes in terms of management oversights. So again, you can go to any one of the plants in Mexico or any one of the plants in the United States, you're going to find the process to be exactly the same.
So I'd like to ask you a few questions. So when we talk with our customers and we ask, why ShopView, we tend to get some pretty standard or consistent, I should say, feedback. One, it requires minimal manual entries. It's pretty easy to interface for the operators. Having toured a few of your facilities quite recently, even, to have a number of your operators say, oh yeah, that's easy, just do this and this. I mean, it's impressive that they're able to pick it up that quickly. And I think it's fair to say that the user intuitiveness is there, and that's why the operators do well with it.
Yeah, when you take a look at the interface, just the usability of the system, we created a dashboard for our operators to make it very usable. Even with protective gloves, they can interface with the direct machine interface, and it's extremely usable. And it provides us all the information that we're really looking for. Again, why ShopView is because when I took a look at the offering of the toolkit when we started this, it met all of the check marks that I was looking for. And I made a very conscious decision that I wanted to get away from a homegrown solution. Listen, a homegrown solution may be effective for some, but the person who develops a homegrown solution, if they retire or are hurt in an accident, you're in trouble. Mm-hmm. And so I told the folks that I was not going to support that any longer, that we're going to go to a vanilla implementation. Now, when I say vanilla, I want to be a little bit more specific. The vanilla doesn't really apply to you guys, because what I find with you guys is that it's vanilla, but I've been able to put a little bit of caramel sauce on it, some sprinkles, and it tastes pretty good. Sure. And I like what we've been able to accomplish. And you guys are flexible enough with me to be able to support some of the configurations that I'd like to see for a interface for the future. And so you guys have been really, I got to say, great partners to be part of. And I got to say, I'm really hard on people. And you guys have been really great partners.
I was going to say, when you said you want to go straight vanilla, you guys are not straight vanilla.
No.
You're pushing the envelope. You guys have a great environment. I think, with the depth of capabilities that we bring, it's easy to get really, really complex really quickly, right? So I think we try to do a good job of providing guardrails, right? Saying, hey, right, this is what standard looks like. This is what fit to standard is and what the benefit is. Okay, we got to go a little bit outside the guidelines here, guardrails here, excuse me, because it's going to drive this value. We had a little conversation offline, and one of the things I found interesting you brought up is that you've got a dual ERP strategy, right? You've got one ERP in America, and you've got other ERPs potentially in Europe. One of the cool things with ShopView is we're ERP agnostic, right? We've got those integrations with other ERP systems. So that means you can take your best-in-class MES approach in a North American facility and potentially pick it up and drop it in a facility in Europe that has a different ERP system.
Yeah, it's just how we connect to the enterprise solution. Another thing that was an inherent benefit that we didn't realize at the time that we're developing is I'm part of the automotive industry, obviously, but from the introduction. The automotive industry, through the IATF obligatory rules, is they're asking for now full lot traceability. And by the way, it's already implemented. With the implementation of ShopView, we have the ability to scan into inventory when we're in manufacturing the product, the components that go into it. So every component, we have traceability to the subcomponents that made up that part. So when it came to traceability, it was a bonus for us because it was a requirement coming up, and it was something that we had implemented already.
And I think that's something that plays well in many industries, right? We do a lot of work in the aerospace and defense industry, life science, medical device industries. They all have variations of that traceability and audit trail requirement, which is interesting. One thing, you've used this term in several of our conversations in the past. You've referred to MES in general as foundational to your neural network. Can you talk a little bit about what that means?
So one of the things that I've come to understand is that technology, for the purpose of technology, is no value. It has no value. You have to implement technology once you have a foundation of structure and an organization that has discipline. Once you have that, technology can be an accelerator. Technology can be an accelerator. The problem that I've had, to be truthful, is I've deployed possibly too many technological initiatives at one time. And what people were saying is, Bob, you got to slow down. We have to absorb what we have before you go to the next phase of deployment. So in the decision to go in with the ShopView MES solution, one of the things that I really appreciate is that the manufacturing nuclear hub, if you will, or that central processing unit is coming from you guys. And then through an API development, we're able to bolt on different solutions that we find to be very effective for our shop floor management. So the neural network starts with ShopView, and then what we do is we bolt onto that, again through an API development with you guys, the different tools that we find to be useful to manage it. And it creates that one entry point interface that makes it much easier for the people on the shop floor to manage. And so I really appreciate how all of this comes together quite successfully.
So before stepping into phase 2 or stage 2 of this process, I think one of the things I heard you say that I want to point out as it relates to ShopView is building blocks. How to start in a certain area of process and function and grow into another. So when we look at ShopView holistically, we look at it as it's 3 key areas, right? 1, labor management, helping manage the time and the energy of your people and their processes. 2, moving into that digital advanced manufacturing process, where we're going to talk in a moment about direct machine interface and how you're capturing data from those machines and running it through ShopView. And then really getting into the big data strategy, the IoT strategy, the APIs, et cetera. So when we look at ShopView, this isn't necessarily a maturity curve per se, but it just breaks out the modules and the functions into consumable concepts, right? So labor, machines, and then visibility.
I have to say that in our labor markets where we have employees, the time and attendance component of it has really been a big hit. People like to have that interface to be able to put in vacation requests and get those responses at their DMI, their direct machine interface. If they have any attendance issues, they can go in and take a look at their HR record. There's all kinds of different information that's provided to the employee at their fingertips. And I have to say that's been really appreciated. The second thing that they really appreciate is they love the and-on system, and we'll talk about that
absolutely
in the near future in this discussion, but the and-on system is very powerful for the employee.
So let's go to step 2. If we think about what's happening and understanding what's happening in the factory, maybe expand upon the material handling and inventory control theme that we talked about, which is your and-on signaling. Why don't we start there? If I look at ShopView, right, we're collecting data from over 7,500 machines today, 200 million interactions per year. Those interactions could have multiple nodes, multiple data points. So we're talking billions of nodes of data. put that into Hutchinson's view and give me your perspective on how you're controlling and managing that information effectively and making excellent decisions with it.
Well, if you go back to the 3 basic rules that we talked about when we started the discussion, talking with data is one of the foundational rules. And the issue that you have with many organizations that don't have good record keeping on the floor, the only way that you can really control inventory is by cycle counting your inventory, understanding what you had purchased, what you have in your work in process, and being able to reconcile that. And that's a process that most factories will go through. But it's basically it's an approximation. You're trying to anticipate what your consumption is based on that. What I really appreciate with the MES system is that direct machine interface. We scan into inventory small batch quantities of material. When you scan an inventory, it's going to verify the completion of the previous batch of material, and it's going to tell you use the right amount of components based on your bill of materials. You're good. Oh, by the way, you have 10 more components than we thought you should. So you had excess inventory. By the way, you have 10 less. In each case, it drives an action plan. And having that interface really provides a real accurate view of the workshop environment on a daily basis. Not a daily basis. We do snapshots every 15 minutes.
Yes, you're talking now about the ability to have those powerful analytics, have them displayed throughout the organization. I've walked through a few of your plants, and you have the dashboards posted so people know what's happening all the time. And I think that's important.
Yeah, it's important because again, what I've found is everything that I measured, we've been able to improve. Everything we've measured, we've been able to improve. By having good data and measuring good data, we can then come up with means to be able to improve. And that's exactly what's happened with the MES implementation. It drives good data.
And you've been a great partner in working with us as we recently released our big data interface, or our BDI as we're calling it. It's a RESTful API that's going to help customers take that data out of ShopView and candidly put it into any BI or data visualization platform of their choice, so they can build their own dashboards, do what they'd like to do with that data, mash it up with other data sources to really get a true end-to-end view of manufacturing operations. So we thank you for the support and the development partnership there. Let's take it to the next step. We talked about alerts, we talked about andons and escalations. Tell me how you're leveraging those peripherals, if you will, to make better decisions.
Can I ask you, have you ever been in a factory that has a one-way andon? They have a phone over on a pole.
It just
rings. You dial a number, and then they do it over the intercom. I need parts over. That's right. I have no idea what that person just said. And so no one else in the plant knew what they had. So why do you think they're leaving their workstation? Because it's a one-way andon. The thing that I was driving for initially was I was trying to come up with two-way andon solutions. And the two-way andon solutions were quite expensive. One of the benefits of using the ShopView MES solution is that we've designed multiple andon activities, maintenance, safety, quality, supervision, warehouse. With a touch of the button and a very simple input to the DMI, the operator can send a signal out to all of these support activities, and they get notification of the request. And from that, then they can respond back to the operator to be able to let them know, I'm on my way, or I'm in a really busy situation. Talk to your supervisor because I can't be there for an hour.
And you guys do a great job of using a number of different communication tools, be it text, be it email, right? Banner notifications on the console for the ShopView user. There's never an opportunity for a lack of two-way notifications.
And I do employee interviews every year. And when I sit down with small groups of employees and I talk to them about the ShopView deployment, it is consistent. The message coming back is they love the time and attendance, and they love the andon communication because they feel important. They feel that people respect them in the organization, and that's what we need to do. is we need to show these people tremendous respect.
You know, I think one of the things we're seeing, and we'll be having some additional dashboards released later this year, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes, is this is an example of an OEE dashboard from one of our largest customers, really running a huge machine shop now, one of the largest in the country. They're pumping this data up everywhere throughout the plant, right? So that the operators, the engineers, down on the plant floor, they know how they're performing. They know where the bottlenecks are. And sometimes just based upon tribal knowledge, they know where the bottlenecks are coming before they show up. And that's just a good example of big data driving decisions, right? And you guys do a great job with that. Stage 3, we talk about preparing, right? And moving toward predictive. You guys have done a great job here in this regard and have really pushed the envelope. Let's talk a little bit about things like your pre-shift checklists and things like that to help you push the information through the system.
The important thing to recognize is we still use quite a few humans in our process. And as humans, we sometimes have off days. And so my thought here was to try to create a methodology similar to like the pilots do in a takeoff sequence. If you've ever been in a co-pilot seat, the pilots follow a very rigorous process, even though they do it every day, of the questions that they have to answer to verify that they didn't have an off day and miss something. And so I look at it like the pilot program, is asking just basic questions to be able to have an understanding, is my operator engaged to be able to do their job today? If not, then I have an immediate escalation to a supervisor to come over and just find out, are you okay?
Sure.
And that's been really a powerful tool for us to be able to help out with a consistent behavior for quality performance and consistent behavior for safety performance. Those are two really critical aspects of our business.
And you go from the pre-shift checklist to even one step further, really, right? Spoon feeding your engineers and operators with actual steps, what they should be doing in their process using the digital instruction capability.
Well, this is really great. Now it's hard for me to admit to this, okay? But in 2014, I didn't know the YouTube existed.
You do now, I know that for a fact.
And so it was Christmas of 2014, and my girls had bought me a really beautiful flash for my camera. It was a small computer. I spent 45 minutes trying to read the instructions, and I couldn't figure them out. My daughter came down and said, "Hey, why aren't you watching a YouTube video?" What are you talking about? It was 4 minutes, 52 seconds later, I watched a YouTube video and I could operate it. And that was my aha moment. So now all my operations, I have a media department. We document everything through our own internal YouTube channel where we have instructional videos for our employees. Now, what's great about that is we have many languages in our factories. It's language independent because people can see and visualize and follow the recipe and do a great job. And so today, I'm a YouTube junkie. I watched, last night I was doing emails until late. I watched 2 hours of YouTubes last night. I'm constantly doing research on YouTubes. And I find this to be a tremendous tool to be able to help that. And today, now I can take the YouTube video of the operation, I can pump it through the direct machine interface at the workstation and have the person mimic the process. Studies show that you have to do something, read something at least 7 times before it goes from short-term memory to long-term memory. Do something, read something, whatever, 7 times. And so this provides us that opportunity to have that consistency in approach.
So not just the standard documents and pictures and actual tasks and checklists and inspections, etc., but actually showing them, right? Putting that video in front of me.
Honestly, most people don't read the instructions. It's quite boring.
I find that to be true. My children definitely do not read the notes that I leave for them.
No,
so
no,
that is true.
No.
So let's go to something exciting. We've got about 15 minutes of content maybe left here. Let's talk about the next stage of your journey. This is really exciting for us as a partner of yours, talking about autonomous action and adapting these autonomy solutions. So I know the audience wants to hear a lot about this because it's incredible.
This is, anybody on the call can go and Google. You take a look at this Kanban structure. And it's a real simple concept. I mean, it's been used for decades across the world to control the shop floor. And so we do that. We use a Kanban methodology, but the Kanban methodology we use, once we receive the information from our customer, we develop a master plan schedule, and we level that so that we have a very stable environment for our production people. Now, in some weeks you're going to build a little inventory, and some weeks you're going to pull a little inventory. But the fact is, you're going to create a very stable environment for your operators. In the past, if you take a look at the Kanban systems, they haven't changed much in decades. They use red cards, and they use a Hijunka image, and it's basically a card slot. You put the cards in a slot, you have a time frame. These are the cards that should be green. And if there's red, you better go look and see what's going on.
Sure.
The problem with cards is people lose them. They take them and they put them in their pocket and they go home. And so I got to say that I really dislike the card-based Kanban system. So what I've been working on with you and Casco, and I've got a brilliant data analytics engineer who's designed algorithms to be able to take the customer image and help me with leveling. And so today what we're in the process of is deploying a digital solution on that. And that's going to provide a faster escalation to the management team when we're not hitting the attainment, so that we can have a clear understanding of what's going on with the shop floor. I'm excited about this deployment, and I think we're going to be going live with this in the next 30 days with you.
You are, and that's going to be leveraging the ShopView alternative device interface, so we can take data from any type of machine, right? And I think you're looking at being able to communicate with your fleet of AIVs, correct?
And so when you take a look at the different logistics methods in factories today, you can use humans, you can use forklifts, you can use tuggers. We don't allow forklifts on our plant floor. We feel that they're unsafe to be around people. And so as we look at the technological changes in factory logistics, robotic vehicles, AIVs, they're artificial intelligent vehicles that you can program the routes of the plant, and you can communicate to them as a robot. And these are great ways to be able to create what we call our Uber transport system. And that's what we're deploying today, is our Uber transport system, to be able to have specific material to specific work cells that need it, so that we have just the needed inventory going into the work cell to be able to build the production. As soon as they complete it, remove that inventory, put it in a TPA area in the warehouse, and have your container ready for the next, so you can squeeze more sales out of that manufacturing footprint.
Excellent. Excellent. This is going to be an exciting chapter in the ShopView Hutchinson relationship. We're excited about it.
It's super. It's very cool.
And so we're coming to the end of the content here. So I want to go back to something we said earlier as we start to wrap things up here and field some questions. I referenced LNS Research's quote of 28% of industrial companies are not leveraging IoT or early in their journey. You are not early in your journey. You are smack dab in the middle, if not advanced. Why do you think some leaders struggle structurally building and executing on an IoT strategy?
It's interesting that question. On the way out here, I was watching a YouTube video, and it was talking about the typical CEO. And if you take a look at the typical CEO in this YouTube, indicated that most people were driving performance based on a 90-day P&L. And the problem is with that, you don't have insight to a vision beyond that 90 days. When I take a look at my role, if I could change my title from CEO to CVO, and that is the Chief Visionary Officer of the company, I believe my role is to be able to provide a vision of the future based on the technological changes that are going on, the market changes, and to have a perspective on what the next 5 to 10 years really does add up for our business, and how to prepare the organization to be be ready for that next wave of technology. And so I've been on the forefront of technological implementations, because my organization was solid enough to be able to use technology as an accelerator. And so many organizations, if the organization doesn't have the discipline, technological implementations really aren't good. So we believe that we have the right organization, the right discipline, and we're ready to implement these technological accelerators to keep us ahead of our competition. And I'm really proud of the family that I represent.
You know, you mentioned having a solid team, a disciplined team. You also have an agile team. You guys can change directions as needed. You quickly can observe a change that might be necessary, model it, and execute against it, which I think is important too, especially with the way technology is advancing as fast as it is. That said, let me ask you a question, maybe fair or unfair. If you have to look at some lessons learned in this journey, either through positive outcomes, maybe some hiccups, what would you say a few of the lessons learned are in this journey, if you look at the largest benefits of what IoT can bring to an organization?
Yeah, so if I were to go back and take a look at the deployment that we've done over the last 5 years, is I suffer from an addictive behavior to work. I'm a workaholic, and I'm a professed workaholic. I love to work. It has had a negative impact on my family at times because I love to work. But the fact is, I try to separate my desire to work from the people around me, so that I'm not do as I say and do as I do. I'm trying to be cognizant that I'm asking enough reasonable things from my employees so that they don't create an imbalance between work and home. But unfortunately, because of my great desire to consider this a house construction, I want to accelerate it. I push them sometimes too fast and too hard.
Sure.
And the only thing that the danger I would say from anyone out there is that you have to be very cognizant of the desire to create a balance between what is a technological implementation in people's lives outside of work. And so I try to keep that in check, and I try to have my team help me keep that in check, because they all know me. And I have a tendency, we have a code word at work as I talk Bob. I sometimes have digital dropout because my thought process is faster than sometimes I can speak accurately. So when I'm explaining a project, I ask them, am I talking Bob? You know, interestingly enough, my finance people say 100% of the time I'm talking Bob. I'm talking Bob 100% of the time. So I mean, you just have to be cognizant of that.
We do have a question from the audience. If you would be willing to share, what would be your top 2 or 3 measured criteria that you're looking to capture in your plant and your operations?
You know, that's a good. The first thing that I'm looking for is adherence to inventory control. For me, that's really it's important. If you have good adherence to inventory control, then you don't have the hidden factory. And what I mean by the hidden factory is, when I started out the discussion, I said that I don't want to oversimplify it, but it's a mass of material coming in the factory, the mass that you sell to your customer, and the mass that goes into the trash. The hidden factory is that. It's reported scrap versus unreported scrap. And if you have really good inventory control, and you know the mass of the product coming in, and you know the mass of the product going to the customer, then you can resolve the issues that come up. And that for me is the number one. The second part of it is having a very clear perspective on the time it takes to answer andons for my people on the floor. You know, again, the only people making money are the people on the floor, or the robots on the floor. And before, what would happen is a downtime ticket would occur after it was acknowledged by maintenance. What if maintenance didn't come out and grab the ticket for an hour? So you got distorted views in terms of your OEE.
Absolutely.
But now, because of the downtime occurring, as soon as they press a button, all my OEE information becomes now relevant because it's real-time information. So that's been a really great tool for me to be able to attack the issues and really fix the problems that are creating a variation to standard.
Do you also measure labor optimization? You mentioned OEE.
Oh, sure. I mean, when we take a look at it, we look at labor efficiency. We look at direct labor efficiency to standard. And with this, I have tremendous analytics of labor efficiency to standard.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for answering those. So if those of you out there do have any questions that you want to type into the chat box, we'll go ahead and take those as they've been coming in. Really the last slide before we wrap up, and thank you for your time. You know, ShopView's been around for over 25 years. Our company's been around for 35 years. So we know manufacturing, we know it very, very well. We understand the software and how companies should best adopt the software for their process. We have over 40,000 customer employees using ShopView out there. You know, Bob and his team being some great supporters of ours across 4 continents. Over 10 billion in goods being produced in plants that are using ShopView as their MES platform. And one of the last keys I want to mention, we talk about this all the time, is value realization. Understanding that when you make an investment in a technology, in this case ShopView, that you're going to get a return on your investment, right? So we like to look at our clients, put measurable criteria in place that we can then look back and say, did we meet our objectives? And seeing an ROI in 6 to 9 months is incredible. So we do see that being very, very consistent. So and again, across many industries, any industry really. So with our team, we're very excited about it. So I do have a question from the audience. Let's see here. What is the timeline for the IoT-based ShopView products to be released? So I'll answer that at a high level and happily follow up with somebody who has that question. And I think it's Hassan there, right? So the ShopView Big Data Interface was released in December of 2019, the first release. So that is available. The alternate device ADI is also available. And we'll also be releasing a new series and suite of dashboard tools. We are working with a industry-leading business intelligence platform, a provider that we're going to be embedding a series and a suite of new dashboards into ShopView as an add-on component. And we'll have more to announce about that in the next 30 days. But to answer the question directly, the tools to support an IoT framework are currently available. All right. Can you see that question there? Data-driven decision-making. Yeah. I'm just reading the questions here in the chat room. Do you have any recommendation that a person with time at top level? So for Scott out there, we'll get with you offline for your question. I think it's an important question. It's going to warrant some conversation so we can best understand the context of it. But I appreciate that question, Scott. We will, Scott Lecomte, we will get back to you directly. Next question, how do small to medium scale manufacturing shops start IoT implementations? You know, I think that is an incredibly wise question. You have to look at where is that low hanging fruit. Bob, I may ask you, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here, but when you look at low hanging fruit around IoT, what are some of the simple wins that you've had, or the quickest wins that you think you've had?
Oh, it's real simple. When you take a look at the manufacturing environment, the first phase of it is the labor efficiency. When you take a look at your where you start with your information of things, you want to be able to understand the utilization of the labor employed. Especially if you're in the United States with labor, the cost of labor is extremely impactful to your cost of goods sold. And so that's a great starting point. The utilization of capital employed with OEE is another very simple thing to be able to drive from this process. Scrap is huge when it comes to the cost of goods sold. So these are some simple things that you can implement right away.
Okay. So I think you guys have done a great job of that, certainly. And I know some of the customers we met 2 weeks ago at our IoT event that were on the smaller side really struggled with where do we start? What are some simple areas to start, and how can we capture information? We have silos of data on the plant that exist today. The easiest place to start is to start to get that data harmonized.
The first thing is to start with standards.
Absolutely.
Do you have standards? And if you have standards, then measure against standard. And if you want an improved means to measure against standard, go with a basic ShopView implementation.
Absolutely. So do we have any, that is it, I think, for questions. So we are right on time. So Bob, first off, thank you very, very much for taking time out of your day today to join us and share Hutchinson's successes.
I got to tell you, I've never done this. I've refused all interviews up to this point, but I'm a big proponent of your company. And you can talk to my team. I'm not kind to a lot of people because I have high expectations. And I guess you could talk to Mike. I've been tough on him.
Well, we want you to have high expectations of us, and our job is to deliver against those expectations, and we enjoy it. So it's a great partnership. We thank you for your time today. I want to thank the audience out there that joined today. The session is going to be recorded. We will distribute the recording to all of you. If you have specific questions that you did not ask today or you want to follow up, please find my contact information here on the last slide. You can route that directly to me. If it's a question for Bob, I will gladly route it to him as well. Bob, again, thank you for your time. To those out in the audience, thank you very much for taking time out of your afternoon today. And we appreciate you joining us, and have a great rest of your afternoon. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.